I decided to surprise my husband and came without warning, but at the house I discovered my best friend's car. Looking through the bedroom window, I saw what destroyed my life. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I had believed for 42 years that I knew what love looked like. It looked like Saturday morning pancakes, like Robert's reading glasses left on the kitchen table, like Margaret's laughter echoing through our garden parties. I was 70 years old, a grandmother of 5, living in a comfortable 2-story house in suburban Connecticut. My life was ordinary, predictable, safe. Or so I thought. Robert and I had weathered everything together, raising 3 children, burying both our parents, surviving his heart attack 5 years ago. Margaret had been my closest friend since college. She was there when I gave birth to my first child. I was there when she divorced her second husband. We shared everything: recipes, secrets, grandchildren's photos, dreams about retirement. We were family, not by blood, but by choice. The trouble began so quietly, I almost missed it. It started 3 months before that terrible day. Robert had become distant. Not angry, not cold, just absent. He'd spend hours in the garage organizing tools or take long evening walks alone. When I asked to join him, he'd smile that patient smile and say, "You rest, honey. I know your knees have been bothering you." He was right about my knees, but something felt wrong about his concern. It was too careful, too deliberate. Then there were the phone calls. Robert had never been much for texting, but suddenly his phone was constantly buzzing. He'd glance at it, frown slightly, and slip it into his pocket. "Just spam," he'd say. "Nothing important." But why would spam make his jaw tighten like that? Margaret started acting strange too. She'd always dropped by unannounced, that was our way. But now she'd call first, asking specifically when Robert would be home. "I don't want to interrupt if he's working in the garage," she'd say. Since when did Margaret care about interrupting? One evening, I found a receipt in Robert's jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at Romano's, our anniversary restaurant. But we hadn't been there in months. When I asked him about it, he barely looked up from his newspaper. "Client meeting," he said. Robert had been retired for 6 years. The final straw came on a Tuesday morning. I was doing laundry and found a long blonde hair on Robert's shirt collar. Margaret was blonde. I was not. My hands shook as I held that single hair up to the light. Was I going crazy? Was I imagining things? I decided to do something impulsive, something the old me would never have done. I would surprise Robert. I'd been planning to visit our daughter in Boston that weekend, but instead, I'd come home early. Maybe I'd catch him at whatever he was hiding. Maybe I'd prove myself wrong and feel foolish but relieved. That Friday, I left for Boston as planned, kissing Robert goodbye. But instead of staying the whole weekend, I drove back Saturday afternoon. My daughter thought I was being paranoid, but she didn't try to stop me. "Trust your instincts, Mom," she said. I pulled into our driveway at 4 p.m. The autumn sun was already low, casting long shadows across our quiet street. Everything looked normal. Our garden, our mailbox, our white picket fence that Robert had painted last spring. Everything except the silver Honda Civic parked in front of our house. Margaret's car. My heart began to pound. There could be 100 innocent explanations. Maybe she was returning something. Maybe she and Robert were planning a surprise party for me. Maybe. I approached the house slowly, my sensible shoes crunching on fallen leaves. The front door was locked. I could have used my key, but something stopped me. Instead, I walked around to the side of the house, toward our bedroom window. The curtains were usually drawn, but today they were slightly open. What I saw through that window destroyed 42 years in a single moment. Robert and Margaret were in our bed. Our bed, with the quilt my grandmother had made, with the pillows we'd bought on our trip to Maine. They weren't just lying there. They were tangled together, intimate, comfortable, like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Margaret's blonde hair spilled across Robert's chest. His hand traced patterns on her bare shoulder. They were talking, laughing softly about something. They looked happy. They looked like they belonged together. I stood frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think. How long? How many times had they lied to my face? How many Saturday mornings had I made pancakes while they planned their next betrayal? My knees, the ones Robert was always so concerned about, finally gave out, and I sank onto the cold ground beneath our bedroom window, my whole life crumbling around me. I don't know how long I sat there in the dirt beneath that window. Minutes? Hours? Time had become meaningless. Eventually, the cold autumn air forced me back to reality. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't go inside. I couldn't face them yet. My hands trembled as I walked back to my car. I drove without thinking, without seeing, until I found myself in the parking lot of a grocery store 3 miles from home. I sat there, engine off, staring at nothing, while other people loaded their trunks with bags, living their normal, unshattered lives. The inventory of my losses scrolled through my mind like credits at the end of a movie. 42 years of marriage, my best friend of almost 50 years, my trust in my own judgment. How had I missed this? The memories were poisoned now. Every kind word from Robert, every coffee date with Margaret, every family gathering where they'd smiled at each other across the table. Had they been laughing at me the whole time? I thought about our grandchildren. They adored both Robert and Aunt Margaret. What would this do to them? I thought about our children. How would I tell them their father had been living a lie? I thought about our friends, our church community, our neighbors who'd watched us grow old together. The humiliation felt like a physical weight on my chest. The practical losses were devastating too. The house was in both our names. Our retirement accounts were joint. After 42 years, our lives were so entangled, I couldn't imagine separating them. At 70, was I supposed to start over? Find a new place to live? Split our furniture, our photo albums, our memories? And Margaret. God, Margaret. The woman who'd held my hand through 3 childbirths, who'd sat with me during Robert's heart attack, praying in the hospital waiting room, who'd helped me pick out my mother's casket. How do you grieve the death of someone who's still alive? I cried then. Not gentle tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that left me exhausted and hollow. When I finally stopped, something had shifted inside me. The grief was still there, but underneath it, I felt something else. Something cold and clear. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. This was different. This was ice forming over deep water. They had taken so much from me, but they hadn't taken everything. I still had my mind. I still had my dignity, even if they'd tried to strip it away. And I still had choices. I could go home right now, confront them, scream and cry and break things. That's what they'd expect. The devastated wife, the betrayed friend, falling apart while they scrambled to make excuses. They'd probably already prepared their explanations. It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you. We tried to fight it. Or I could do something else. Something they wouldn't expect. I pulled out my phone and called my daughter, Emily. My voice was surprisingly steady. Honey, I need to stay in Boston a few more days. I'm not feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I'd never felt worse in my life. Mom, what's wrong? You sound strange. Just tired. I'll explain everything soon, but I need you to do something for me. Don't call your father. Don't tell him I called you. Can you do that? There was a pause. Emily was sharp. She knew something was wrong. Mom! Please, Emily, trust me. I just need a few days to think. Okay, she said slowly. But call me tomorrow. Promise? I promise. I hung up and sat in that parking lot, formulating my plan. I needed information first. How long had this been going on? Were there others who knew? What were my legal rights? I couldn't make decisions in this emotional state. I needed to be smart, methodical, cold. I checked into a Holiday Inn near Emily's house and spent the weekend thinking. I didn't call Robert. Let him wonder. Let him and Margaret panic when I didn't come home on schedule. Let them sweat. By Sunday evening, I had the beginnings of a plan. First, I needed documentation. Photos, if possible. Evidence of the affair. Second, I needed to secure my finances. Third, I needed a lawyer. And fourth, this was the part that made my heart beat faster. I needed to make sure everyone knew the truth. Not just our family, but everyone. Robert and Margaret had built their reputations on being good, trustworthy people. They'd been living a lie. It was time for the truth to come out. I called Robert Sunday night. I'm staying a few more days, I told him. Emily needs help with something. Is everything okay? He sounded concerned, loving even. The bastard. Everything's fine, I lied, matching his tone perfectly. I'll be home Wednesday. That gave me 3 days to prepare, 3 days to transform from a devastated victim into something else entirely, 3 days to become dangerous. Monday morning, I walked into the office of Patricia Chen, a divorce attorney whose name I'd found through a discreet Google search. Her office was in Hartford, far enough from our suburb that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Patricia was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. Mrs. Morrison, what brings you here today? I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. How much evidence do you have? I saw them together, in my bed. Did you take photos, video? I shook my head, feeling foolish. That's okay. We can work with eyewitness testimony, but documentation would strengthen your position. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, but evidence of adultery can still impact alimony and asset division. How are your finances structured? We spent 2 hours going through everything. Patricia was thorough, asking questions I hadn't thought of. By the end, I had a clear picture of my legal position. The house, our savings, Robert's pension. I was entitled to half of everything, possibly more given the circumstances. I'd advise moving quickly, Patricia said. The sooner we file, the sooner we can freeze assets and prevent any financial surprises. Some spouses, when they realize divorce is imminent, start hiding money. The thought hadn't occurred to me. Would Robert do that? A week ago, I would have said no. Now, I didn't know what he was capable of. I need to go back home first, I said. Wednesday. I need to see them, confront them, get my own documentation. Patricia frowned. I don't recommend confrontation without legal protection in place. I need proof, I said firmly. For me, not just for court. I need to see their faces when I ask them directly. Tuesday, I drove back to our neighborhood, but I didn't go home. Instead, I parked down the street at 2 p.m., a time when Robert usually took his afternoon nap. I waited, watching our house through the rear-view mirror. At 2:47 p.m., Margaret's silver Honda pulled into our driveway. My stomach clenched. She had a key. Of course she had a key. I'd given it to her years ago for emergencies. I'd never asked for it back. She let herself in. I waited 15 minutes, then quietly approached the house. This time, I used my phone, setting it to video before I looked through the bedroom window. They were there again. In the middle of the afternoon, in my bed, without a care in the world. Robert's arm was around her. They were watching television together, comfortable and domestic. Margaret was wearing one of my robes. My hands shook, but I kept the phone steady, recording for 90 seconds before backing away. I had my proof. That evening, I called Robert again. "I'll be home tomorrow afternoon," I said, "around 3 p.m. "Great, honey. I've missed you." His voice was warm, affectionate. How did he do it? How did he lie so effortlessly? "Has Margaret stopped by at all?" I asked casually. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long. "Margaret? No, haven't seen her." "Why?" "No reason, just wondering. See you tomorrow." I hung up and stared at my phone. He'd lied. Right to my face, he'd lied. Any lingering doubt I'd had vanished in that moment. Wednesday at 3 p.m., I pulled into our driveway. Robert was waiting on the front porch, smiling. He hugged me, asked about Emily, helped carry my bag inside. He was performing the role of loving husband so perfectly. "Robert," I said, setting my purse on the kitchen table. "We need to talk." His smile faltered slightly. "Sure, honey. What's wrong?" "I came home early Saturday. I saw Margaret's car here." The color drained from his face. Just slightly, but I saw it. "Oh, I didn't realize. I looked through our bedroom window." My voice was steady, cold. "I saw everything." Robert opened his mouth, closed it. For 42 years, I'd never seen him speechless. He sat down heavily in a kitchen chair. "How long?" I asked. "Helen, how long, Robert?" 3 years. His voice was barely a whisper. 3 years. While I'd been trusting them, loving them, they'd been betraying me for 3 years. I felt like I'd been punched. "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "I've already spoken with an attorney. I have video evidence. I'm telling the children this week. I'm telling everyone." "Helen, please, we can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. I want you out of this house by Friday." "This is my house, too." "Then I'll leave. Either way, we're done." Robert stood up, his face reddening. "You can't just—" "I can. I am. It's over." He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Good. Let him see who I really was. Not the comfortable, forgiving wife he'd taken for granted. Someone else entirely. Someone he should have been afraid to cross. That evening, I called each of our 3 children. Emily already suspected something was wrong. Michael, our middle child, was shocked into silence. Sarah, the youngest, cried. But all 3 of them believed me, supported me, were furious on my behalf. That mattered more than I'd realized it would. "Dad's staying in the house for now," I told them. "I'm going to stay with Emily for a few weeks while the lawyers sort things out. But I need you all to know the truth before you hear his version." "What about Margaret?" Sarah asked. "Does her family know?" "Not yet, but they will." Robert tried to call me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. He sent text messages. "Please, we need to talk." "It's not what you think." "I love you." I deleted them all. Thursday morning, I went to our bank. Patricia had advised me to document all our financial accounts. I made copies of statements, transferred half of our joint savings into a new account in my name only. The bank manager, a woman named Lisa, who'd known us for years, looked at me with sympathy. Word was already starting to spread. That afternoon, Margaret finally called. Helen, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. I saw you, in my bed, wearing my robe. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen, Margaret? Were you planning to tell me eventually? Or were you just going to keep laughing behind my back? We weren't laughing. Her voice cracked. Helen, you're my best friend. I was your best friend. You destroyed that. You destroyed everything. I love him. She was crying now. I've loved him for years. I tried to stop. I did, but... Stop. Just stop. My voice was ice. I don't want to hear about your feelings. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt powerful, strong. I was taking control of my own story. Friday evening, Robert was still in the house. He'd ignored my demand that he leave. When I drove by, I was staying with Emily, but I needed to pick up more clothes. I saw his car in the garage. I also saw Margaret's car parked down the street. They were plotting, planning their next move. That night, Robert showed up at Emily's house. My daughter answered the door and blocked his way. I need to talk to your mother. Mom doesn't want to talk to you. Emily, please, I'm still your father. A father who betrayed our mother for 3 years? Who lied to all of us? Emily's voice was cold. She'd always been closest to Robert. This was destroying her, too. But she was on my side. You need to leave. Not until I talk to Helen. I appeared in the doorway behind Emily. You have 30 seconds. Robert looked desperate, older than I'd ever seen him. Helen, I made a terrible mistake, but we can fix this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Please don't throw away our marriage. You threw it away 3 years ago. I'll end things with Margaret, completely. Today, right now. Too late. Please. He was begging now. I love you. I've always loved you. You love security. You love comfort. You love having 2 women who cater to you. You don't love me. You don't even know what love means. His face changed then, hardened. You're going to regret this. You can't survive without me. You don't even know how to balance a checkbook. There it was, the real Robert, showing himself at last. I've been balancing our checkbook for 40 years, I said quietly. I know exactly where every penny is, including the money you spent on hotel rooms and dinners for 2. Get off my daughter's property before I call the police. He left. But the next day, Saturday, things escalated. Margaret called Emily's house crying, begging to speak with me. When I refused, she showed up at the house. Emily wouldn't let her in. You're destroying lives, Margaret shouted through the door. Robert's having chest pains. What if he has another heart attack? Can you live with that? I opened the door. Margaret looked terrible. Red eyes, no makeup, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in the day before. If Robert's having chest pains, he should go to the hospital. That's not my responsibility anymore. How can you be so cold? You taught me how. 3 years of lying, sneaking around, sleeping in my bed. That's an excellent education in coldness. Margaret's face crumpled. We didn't mean for this to happen. Yes, you did. Every single time you came to my house, smiled to my face, and then betrayed me, you meant it. Now leave. She left. Robert sent our son Michael to talk to me, but I refused to discuss it. By Sunday, they'd both stopped trying. I spent the next few days at Emily's, resting. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving me exhausted and aching. My daughter took care of me, brought me tea, sat with me while I cried. The worst was over, I thought. I was wrong. Wednesday afternoon, a flower delivery arrived at Emily's house. 24 red roses. The card read, 42 years of memories can't be erased. Please give me a chance to make this right. I'm going to therapy. I ended things with M. All my love, Robert. I threw the flowers in the trash. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Father Murphy from our church. Robert and I had been members of St. Catherine's for 30 years. Helen, I heard about your situation. I'm so sorry. Would you and Robert consider coming in for couples counseling? Sometimes, with God's guidance and forgiveness, marriages can heal. Father, did Robert tell you how long the affair lasted? He mentioned it had been going on for some time. 3 years, with my best friend, in my home, in my bed. My voice was steady. I appreciate your concern, but some things can't be forgiven. Some things shouldn't be. There was a pause. I understand you're hurt. I'm not hurt, Father. I'm done. There's a difference. After I hung up, Emily hugged me. I'm proud of you, Mom. For destroying my marriage? For respecting yourself enough to walk away. Thursday brought another attempt. This time, it was Margaret's daughter, Christine, who I'd known since she was born. She called, crying, Aunt Helen, please, my mom is falling apart. She's not eating, not sleeping. She made a mistake, but she's a good person. Christine, I love you. You're not responsible for your mother's choices, but I can't help her. She needs to face the consequences of what she did. She said you were like sisters. We were, and she destroyed that. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, but this isn't my fault. That hurt more than I expected. Christine had called me Aunt Helen her whole life. We'd celebrated her birthdays, her graduation, her wedding. Now she was taking her mother's side, as she should. But it still felt like another loss. Friday evening, my son Michael came to Emily's house. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, looking uncomfortable. Mom, I talked to Dad. Michael, just hear me out. He's a mess. He's lost weight. He's not sleeping. He knows he messed up. He wants to make amends. Did he tell you he lied to me for 3 years? Yes. Did he tell you about all the times Margaret came to family dinners, pretending to be my friend while sleeping with him? Michael flinched. Yes. Then what exactly am I supposed to forgive? I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to consider he's still my dad, and he's destroying himself over this. I reached across the table and took my son's hand. Michael, I love you, and I know this is hard for you, but your father made his choices. Now I'm making mine. I deserve better than a man who could lie to my face for 3 years. I know. Michael's eyes were wet. I feel like I'm losing both my parents. You're not losing me. I'm right here. I'll always be here. But I can't sacrifice my self-respect to make things easier for everyone else. He nodded and left. I cried after he was gone. But they were different tears. Not weak, defeated tears. Cleansing ones. The real support came from unexpected places. Saturday morning, my younger sister Janet called from Arizona. I hadn't told her yet. We weren't particularly close, but somehow she'd heard. Helen, I just want you to know I'm proud of you. After what you saw, most women would have tried to pretend it didn't happen. You're being brave. I don't feel brave? That's what makes it brave. Later that day, Lisa from the bank called my cell. Mrs. Morrison, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted you to know that Mr. Morrison came in yesterday, trying to access your new account. We didn't allow it, of course, just thought you should know. So Robert was trying to control the money now. Good thing I'd moved quickly. Sunday, I drove to church alone. I hadn't been since before I discovered the affair. Walking into St. Catherine's felt like walking into enemy territory. Would people judge me? Take Robert's side? Father Murphy greeted me warmly, but said nothing about our phone conversation. I sat in my usual pew, our usual pew, alone for the first time in 42 years. Several people stared. I held my head high. After the service, 3 women approached me: Sarah Jennings, Beth Williams, and Carol Martinez. We'd served on various church committees together for years. "Helen," Sarah said quietly, "we heard. We just want you to know we support you. What Robert did was unforgivable. If you need anything," Beth added, "anything at all, please call us." Carol handed me a casserole dish. "For this week, I know you're staying with Emily. You shouldn't have to worry about cooking." I nearly broke down. These women, who I'd thought of as acquaintances rather than friends, were showing me more loyalty than the people I'd loved most. "Thank you," I whispered. As I walked to my car, I saw Robert standing by his truck across the parking lot. He was watching me, his face unreadable. I looked him straight in the eye, got into my car, and drove away. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer confused. I was ready for whatever came next. Tuesday evening, 2 weeks after I'd confronted Robert, there was a knock on Emily's door. I was in the guest room, working on financial documents for Patricia, when Emily called up the stairs. "Mom, Dad, and Margaret are here. They want to talk to you." My heart started pounding. Both of them? Yes. Together. I came downstairs slowly. Robert and Margaret were standing in Emily's living room. They looked like they'd rehearsed this, standing close but not touching, both wearing somber, apologetic expressions. Emily stood by the door, arms crossed, clearly unhappy they were there. "Helen," Robert began, his voice gentle, "thank you for seeing us. I didn't agree to see you, but since you're here, talk quickly." Margaret stepped forward. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Helen, I owe you an enormous apology. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed our friendship in the worst possible way." I said nothing. Robert continued. "We both owe you an apology. We've done terrible things, hurt you deeply. But Helen, we've been doing a lot of thinking these past 2 weeks. How lovely for you. We want to make this right," Margaret said. "I've been seeing a therapist. Robert's been seeing one too. We're trying to understand how we let this happen." "I can tell you how it happened," I said coldly. "You made choices. Every single day for 3 years, you made the choice to lie to me. Every time you came to my house, Margaret. Every time you kissed me goodnight, Robert. Choices. You're right," Robert said. "And we want to make amends. We think maybe we can all find a way forward." I stared at him. "What exactly are you proposing?" Margaret glanced at Robert, then back at me. "We've ended our relationship. Completely. We're not seeing each other anymore. We realize that the damage we've caused isn't worth it." "How noble. Robert wants to rebuild your marriage," Margaret continued. "And I want to give you both space to do that. I'm willing to move away, if that helps. I've already started looking at apartments in Massachusetts." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You think that's what this is about? You think I'm upset because you two are together?" They looked confused. "I don't care if you stay together or break up," I said. "That's your business. My business is my divorce, my self-respect, and my future, which doesn't include either of you." Robert's gentle expression started to crack. "Helen, be reasonable. We're offering you everything you wanted. We're separated. We're in therapy. What more can we do? You can leave me alone. Think about the children," Margaret said, and there was an edge to her voice now. "Michael is torn apart over this. Sarah hasn't spoken to her father in 2 weeks. Do you want to destroy this entire family over one mistake? One mistake that lasted 3 years? You're being vindictive," Robert said, and now his true face was showing. "You always said you believed in forgiveness and Christian values. Was that all a lie?" "Don't you dare!" I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. Don't you dare use my faith to manipulate me. We're trying to make peace, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face now. We're trying to fix this, but you won't even meet us halfway. You're so focused on punishing us that you don't care who else gets hurt. Who else gets hurt? I stepped closer to her. You mean you? You mean Robert? What about me? What about the 3 years I spent being humiliated without even knowing it? We never meant to humiliate you. Every time you smiled at me, you humiliated me. Every time you hugged me. Every time you gave me advice about my marriage. Every time you sat at my table and ate food I cooked. You humiliated me. Robert's face was red now. So what, Helen? You're just going to throw away everything we built? Our home, our life, our family because your pride is hurt? My pride? I could feel Emily moving closer, protective. This isn't about pride, Robert. This is about respect. And you clearly have none for me. I have plenty of respect. Then respect my decision. The divorce is happening. I don't want your apologies or your therapy or your promises. I want you out of my life. Margaret's face changed then. The tears stopped. Her expression hardened. You know what? Fine. Be alone. Spend the rest of your life bitter and angry. But don't pretend you're some perfect victim. You were a boring wife. Why do you think Robert came to me? The room went silent. Get out, Emily said, her voice shaking with rage. Get out of my house right now. Your mother is destroying this family. My mother caught her husband cheating with her best friend. You destroyed this family, both of you. Get out before I call the police. Robert grabbed Margaret's arm. Come on, this is pointless. She's not going to listen to reason. They left. I stood there shaking, not with fear but with cold fury. Emily hugged me tightly. Mom, I'm so sorry. Don't be. Now I know exactly who they are, no more doubts. That night, I couldn't sleep. Margaret's words kept echoing. Boring wife. Was that how they saw me? How Robert had always seen me? But by morning, the fear had transformed into something else. Determination? Resolve? They'd tried to break me with manipulation and guilt. They'd failed. Now I would show them what I was truly capable of. The final confrontation came 3 weeks later in the most public way possible. At our granddaughter's 8th birthday party. Sarah, our youngest daughter, had planned this party months ago at a local park pavilion. She'd invited both sides of the family, not knowing that her father and I would be separated by then. When she called to ask if I'd still come, I'd heard the anxiety in her voice. Mom, I can't uninvite Dad, but I can't not have you there either. Lily would be heartbroken. I'll be there, I'd assured her. For Lily, I can be civil for 2 hours. What I didn't know was that Margaret would be there too. Sarah had invited her, as she had for every family event for the past 20 years, before learning about the affair. I arrived at the park at noon with Emily and her family. The pavilion was decorated with pink balloons and streamers. Lily, beautiful in her birthday dress, ran to hug me. These moments, these innocent, pure moments with my grandchildren, were what I was fighting to preserve. Robert was already there, standing by the grill with Michael. He saw me and looked away. We hadn't spoken since the attempted reconciliation at Emily's house. Then Margaret arrived. She had the audacity to bring a gift, a large wrapped box that she set on the present table. Sarah saw her and froze. The party chatter quieted. Everyone there knew what had happened by now. Our friends, our extended family. The scandal had spread through our community like wildfire. Margaret, Sarah said quietly, I didn't think you'd actually come. Lily invited me personally. I couldn't disappoint her. It was a power move. By showing up, Margaret was claiming her place in our family, refusing to be exiled. I watched Robert's face. He looked panicked. Clearly, they hadn't coordinated this. I walked calmly to the beverage table, poured myself lemonade, and waited. If they wanted a confrontation, I'd give them one, but on my terms. The party continued awkwardly. Children played, adults made strained small talk. Robert and Margaret carefully stayed on opposite sides of the pavilion. I sat with my daughters, watching everything with cold clarity. Then, during the cake cutting, Margaret made her move. She approached me directly, in front of everyone. "Helen, could we talk privately? Anything you have to say to me can be said right here." People were staring now. Sarah looked mortified. Robert started walking over, probably to intervene. "Fine." Margaret's voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm tired of being treated like a villain. What Robert and I have is real. It's been real for years, and I'm not going to apologize anymore for falling in love." The pavilion went completely silent. "You want to talk about what's real?" I set down my plate and stood. "Let's talk about reality. You betrayed a 50-year friendship. You slept with my husband in my bed. You came to my home for dinners and holidays and smiled to my face while lying to me for 3 years. It wasn't about you. It was entirely about me. Every lie was about me. Every time you chose him, you chose against me." Robert reached us. "Helen, Margaret, this isn't the place." "No." I turned to him. "Where is the place, Robert? When were you planning to tell me? Year 4, year 5, never?" "I was going to tell you." "When? When you gave yourself a heart attack from the stress of juggling 2 women? When I was too old and sick to leave?" Margaret's face was red. "At least he was happy with me. At least I gave him something you couldn't." "A guilty conscience?" I cut her off. "A ruined reputation? The disgust of his children?" "He loves me," Margaret was shouting now. "He loves himself," I said coldly. "And he loves having options. You were just the available option." I turned to address everyone at the party. My family, my friends, people who'd known us for decades. "I want everyone here to understand something. I didn't choose this divorce out of anger or pride. I chose it because I deserve better. Because staying with someone who could lie to me for years would mean I don't value myself. And I do." I looked at Robert. "You had a good wife, a loyal wife. A wife who stood by you through everything. And you threw that away." Then I looked at Margaret. "And you had a friend who would have done anything for you. You threw that away too." "Helen," Margaret's voice broke, "you both made your choices. You chose each other. I hope it was worth it. Because you've lost me. You've lost the respect of this family, and you've lost any claim to the moral high ground you both think you have." I picked up my purse. "Sarah, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I love you and I love Lily. But I can't stay here." Emily stood immediately. "I'll drive you." As we walked to the car, I heard Margaret crying behind me. I heard Robert trying to calm her down. I heard the murmur of shocked voices. I felt nothing but relief. The war was over. I'd won. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Patricia had been brilliant, aggressive, thorough, and uncompromising. Because of Robert's infidelity and our long marriage, I received far more than the standard 50-50 split. I got the house. Full ownership, with Robert required to move out within 30 days of the final decree. Watching him pack his belongings into a U-Haul was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. He'd tried to take the antique desk his mother had given us, but Patricia had documented that it was a gift to both of us, and the judge awarded it to me. "You're really going to keep everything?" Robert had asked bitterly as he loaded boxes. "Not everything, just what I'm entitled to. What I earned through 42 years of loyalty." He'd tried to argue for more of the retirement accounts, claiming he'd need money to start over. The judge hadn't been sympathetic. "You should have considered that before engaging in a 3-year affair," she'd said dryly. I also received ongoing alimony, a substantial amount that would ensure I lived comfortably for the rest of my life. Robert was furious about it, but he had no choice. Connecticut law was on my side. Margaret's situation was even worse. Her family had turned on her almost completely. Christine, her daughter, had initially defended her mother, but after the birthday party confrontation, even she'd stepped back. At Christmas, Margaret hadn't been invited to any family gatherings. She'd spent the holiday alone. I knew this because Christine had called me in tears, apologizing for initially taking her mother's side. Aunt Helen, I didn't understand how bad it was. Mom kept saying it was a mistake, that it just happened. But 3 years isn't a mistake. That's a choice she kept making. You don't need to apologize to me, sweetheart. I do. You've been more of an aunt to me than... I just want you to know I don't condone what she did. Margaret had also lost most of her friends. Our social circle had largely sided with me. The betrayed wife was more sympathetic than the woman who'd betrayed her. I'd heard through Sarah Jennings that Margaret had tried to join a new book club, but the women there had heard about the affair and asked her to leave. The church community had been less forgiving than I'd expected. Father Murphy had tried to counsel both Robert and Margaret about repentance and redemption, but the congregation itself had made its judgment clear. Robert stopped attending services after the 3rd week of cold shoulders and whispered conversations. Robert and Margaret hadn't stayed together. That was perhaps the most delicious irony. According to Michael, who still reluctantly spoke to his father, they'd tried to make a relationship work after the divorce was finalized. But without the thrill of secrecy, without me as the common enemy, they'd had nothing. They'd lasted 6 months before Robert had called it off. She's too needy, he'd complained to Michael. She wants constant attention and reassurance. Of course she did. She'd destroyed her entire life for him. She'd expected it to mean something. Now Robert was living in a small apartment in a neighboring town, working part-time at a hardware store to supplement his reduced retirement income. He looked older, diminished. I'd seen him once at the grocery store, and he'd quickly turned his cart around to avoid me. Margaret had moved to Massachusetts, just as she'd threatened, though not to give Robert and me space. She'd moved because she couldn't stand the judgment anymore, the whispered comments, the loss of her social standing. As for me, I was thriving. The house felt like mine now. I'd redecorated the bedroom completely. New mattress, new furniture, new curtains. I'd painted the living room a color Robert had always hated, but I loved. I'd turned his garage workspace into an art studio and started taking painting classes. My children visited regularly. Emily came every Sunday for dinner. Sarah and I went to lunch twice a month. Even Michael, who'd been the most conflicted, had come around. "You did the right thing, Mom," he'd told me recently. "It took me a while to see it, but you did." My grandchildren adored visiting the house. Without the tension of Robert's presence, without having to navigate the awkwardness of Margaret being there, they were more relaxed, happier. I'd joined a new social group at the community center, a book club, a gardening club, and a volunteer organization that delivered meals to homebound seniors. I was busier than I'd been in years. Beth, Sarah, and Carol, the women who'd supported me at church, had become genuine friends. We met for coffee every Wednesday. They'd been through their own challenges. Beth was a widow. Sarah had survived breast cancer. Carol had a special needs grandson. And they understood strength in a way my old friends never had. One Tuesday afternoon, 6 months after the divorce was final, I was working in my garden when I saw a car pull up to the curb. It was Margaret. She sat there for a long moment before getting out. She looked terrible, thin, tired, older than her 68 years. She walked slowly up my driveway. "Helen," she said quietly, "I know you don't want to see me." "You're right, I don't. I needed to tell you something. I'm moving permanently to Boston. My sister's there. I'm leaving next week." "Okay." "And I wanted to say..." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I'm so sorry." I destroyed everything. My family, my reputation, my best friend. And for what? A relationship that didn't even last a year. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was broken, genuinely remorseful. A year ago, I might have felt sympathy. Now, I felt nothing. I hope you find peace, Margaret. I really do. But not with me. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away, then returned to my garden. The roses I'd planted last month were blooming beautifully. I was exactly where I needed to be. A year after the divorce, my life had transformed in ways I'd never imagined. I'd started traveling, something Robert had always resisted. Too expensive, he'd say, or too exhausting at our age. But with my alimony payments and my portion of our savings, I had the means. And at 71, I'd discovered I had the energy too. In March, I went to Italy with a seniors travel group. We toured Rome, Florence, and Venice. I ate pasta every day, drank wine with dinner, and stood in the Sistine Chapel with tears streaming down my face at the beauty of it. I'd never felt more alive. In June, Emily and I spent 2 weeks in Ireland, tracing our family heritage. We found the village where my grandmother had been born, walked through ancient graveyards, and drank Guinness in pubs where my ancestors might have gathered. Emily and I had always been close, but that trip bonded us in a new way. My art classes had progressed beyond beginner level. I'd sold 3 paintings at a local gallery's community show. They weren't masterpieces, but they were mine, expressions of a creativity I'd suppressed for decades while being a wife and mother. The woman who bought my painting of the Connecticut coastline told me it captured something essential about resilience. I'd nearly cried. I'd also started writing. Just a journal at first, processing everything I'd been through. But then I'd joined a memoir writing class at the community college, and my instructor had encouraged me to turn my experience into something longer. Your story could help other women, she'd said. So I was writing a book, not for publication necessarily, but for myself, for my daughters and granddaughters. A record of how I'd found strength I didn't know I had. My health had improved too. The stress of living with Robert's lies had manifested in ways I hadn't recognized: chronic headaches, digestive issues, insomnia. Within months of the divorce, all of it had resolved. My doctor was amazed. "Whatever you're doing," she'd said at my last checkup, "keep doing it. Your blood pressure is better than it's been in 10 years. I'd even started dating, though casually. George was a widower I'd met at the community center, a retired teacher who made me laugh and never pressured me for more than I was ready to give. We went to movies, museums, and dinner. It was comfortable, easy, fun, nothing serious, but it reminded me that there could be affection in my life again, joy, maybe even love someday. My grandchildren were thriving in the new family dynamic. Without the tension and awkwardness of the affair hanging over everything, holidays were actually enjoyable again. Last Thanksgiving, held at Emily's house, had been full of laughter and genuine warmth. Even my relationship with Michael had strengthened. He'd apologized to me one evening, tears in his eyes. "I thought I was being fair by trying to see Dad's side," he'd said. But there was no Dad's side. What he did was wrong. Period. And you deserved my full support from the beginning. "You were protecting your father," I'd told him. "That's natural." "You're my mother. I should have been protecting you." We'd both cried, and then we'd healed. Meanwhile, Robert's life had continued its downward spiral. The part-time job at the hardware store hadn't worked out. According to Michael, Robert had been fired for being difficult with customers. He was now working occasional shifts at a friend's landscaping company, doing manual labor in his early 70s. The physical work was wearing him down. His health had declined. He'd had another minor heart scare in the spring, though thankfully not a full attack. His doctor had warned him about stress and recommended counseling, but Robert was too proud to go. He'd tried dating, too, but the women in our age bracket in our area all knew what he'd done. News of the affair had spread throughout our community. One woman had apparently agreed to a coffee date, then stood him up with a note. "I don't date men who cheat on their wives." Michael said Robert had become bitter, blaming me for turning everyone against him. He didn't understand that he'd turned people against himself. I hadn't had to say a word. The truth had been damning enough. Margaret's situation was perhaps even worse. Her sister in Boston had initially offered her a place to stay, but according to Christine, that arrangement had fallen apart within months. Margaret was too depressed, too needy, too broken. "She cries all the time," Christine had told me during one of our now regular phone calls. "She keeps saying she lost everything: her best friend, her reputation, her home, her family. She doesn't understand why the relationship with your ex-husband didn't work out. She thought they were soulmates." "Soulmates built on betrayal rarely last," I'd observed. Margaret had tried to reconcile with Christine and her family, but the damage was too deep. Christine's husband had been furious when he learned the full extent of the affair. He'd forbidden Margaret from coming to their home or seeing their children unsupervised. "I can't have my kids learning that Grandma gets to destroy people's lives without consequences," he'd said. Margaret had attempted to reach out to me twice more, once through a letter, once through Sarah. Both times, I'd politely but firmly declined any contact. I'd forgiven her in the sense that I no longer carried active anger. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean giving her access to my life again. I'd heard she'd lost weight, looked unwell, that she'd started attending a depression support group. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. We'd been friends for 50 years, after all. But then I'd remember her wearing my robe in my bed, and the sympathy would evaporate. She'd made her choices. These were the consequences. On the anniversary of the day I'd looked through that bedroom window, I did something symbolic. I took the last photo I had of Margaret and me together, from a vacation we'd taken to Cape Cod 5 years earlier, and I burned it in my fireplace. As I watched it curl and blacken, I felt lighter, free. The old Helen would have felt guilty for feeling satisfaction at others' misfortune. The new Helen understood that this wasn't schadenfreude. This was justice. They'd destroyed my trust, my marriage, my sense of safety. Now they were living with what they'd built, which was nothing, while I was living with what I'd built from the ashes. And what I'd built was beautiful. I learned something crucial through this nightmare. Betrayal doesn't destroy you unless you let it. When I saw them that day through the window, I had a choice. I could have pretended it wasn't happening, could have forgiven too easily, could have sacrificed my dignity for comfort. Instead, I chose myself. At 70 years old, I chose to start over, and it saved my life. If you're facing betrayal, ask yourself, what do I deserve? Then fight for it. What would you have done? Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it.